Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. My name is Gene Joke and today I'm ranking and reviewing the games from the Megacat Collection Volume 1. Megacat Studios are an indie publisher. They publish aftermarket games for, well, not just aftermarket games, but they do a lot of aftermarket games for things like the Sega Mega Drive, the NES and other formats. They do publish, modern games or modern indie games, I suppose, as well, made on, for newer hardware and PCs. And, maybe we'll see some of those on the Evercade as well at some point. But this collection is made up of aftermarket games for old systems. Now, obviously, being that these are aftermarket games, there's no nostalgia involved here, although I had heard of a couple of these games before getting into Evercade. Coffee Crisis and Tanza, because I was interested in the aftermarket scene for the Mega Drive. Those games have come up, and they're the reason I picked up this collection. The question is, how well did they turn out? Were they worth my interest? Well, let's get on with the ranking. Coming in last place, my least favourite game on the collection is Almost Hero. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up for the NES and is clearly inspired by River City Ransom. It controls a bit like that game and the NES Double Dragon games. You've got a kick and a punch, and you use both punch and kick to do a jumping kick. You move around the area, you go to different sections and you'll fight various enemies, get to a boss, defeat the boss, clear the area, and when you've cleared enough you'll then get a final area to go to. Fairly straightforward stuff, and if it played even half as well as Double Dragon on the NES or River City Ransom, it might be a good game. It doesn't. It flickers like a mofo. The sprite flicker is horrendous on this, even by NES standards, and it's just really not a fun game. Combat, it just doesn't control very well. There's not enough variety of moves, although you can upgrade, and really it's just not a fun game. Won't take you that long to beat, but if you're like me, you'll probably not be bothered to beat it because it really took me a lot of effort to put any time into this. I bounced off it pretty hard at the beginning, and I'd much rather pick up the Technos collection. I know it's legacy and expensive these days, but I'd much rather pick that up and play any of the Double Dragon games on there, or River City Ransom, which this is trying to be and failing. But it does have a sense of humour to it, I'll give it that. It's got some amusing nods to various bits of media, but that's about all I can really say about it. That's positive. And my next least favourite will be another NES game, and that is Creepy Brawlers. It's very much like the Punch-Out or Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for the NES, and very similar games. We've got the game on one of the Pico collections, which is in a similar style, and you're fighting these creepy horror-based enemies in your boxing. It's okay-ish, I suppose, but ultimately I just didn't really find it responsive enough or enjoyable enough to really want to keep persevering with it. It's not awful, but it's just not very good either. And also not very good, the next game on the collection is Coffee Crisis. This is the Mega Drive version, and like I mentioned earlier, is one of the games that I had heard about and I was interested in playing when I picked up this collection. It looks the part. You have your coffee baristas fighting aliens to save the world's coffee supply or something. The graphics are quite nice. I mean, they're not top tier Mega Drive style graphics, but they're solid. It's a nice animation. There's a lot of character to it, and there's a bit of a sense of humour to it. The music isn't too bad either. It's the sound effects are a weak point. They just sound hollow, but where the sound really suffers is it's not just the sound, but it's when you're attacking enemies, there's no sense of connection either through sound effect or reaction to them, and that's where the game completely falls down. On top of that, there's not many enemies, but the actual fighting itself isn't satisfying or enjoyable. The game is quite tough in a certain respect. You don't get that many continues, and the combat isn't satisfying or enjoyable enough, or just to make you really persevere and get good with it. I did manage to beat the game, but I will probably never play it again if I can help it. I didn't even want to play it to get the footage for this. So this was a disappointment, but there's potential there. It just obviously fell short in the execution, which is a shame. So moving on, next we have Log Jammers, which is essentially a variation on Windjammers. You are on logs, you throw axes to get them past your opponent in a game of, like air hockey or whatever. And this is for the NES as well. It's okay. First impressions will be bad. It takes a little bit of perseverance to get a feel for the game and working out how it works and how to have fun with it. And you can have fun with it, maybe multiplayer. I did enjoy beating the campaign, but it was hard to really get into, and Most people probably won't. Like I said, there is some fun to be had with it, but it's not a great game. Graphically and sonically, it's okay for an NES game. Again, nothing special. The visuals can be a bit muddy. There is a bit of character to it. So yeah, it's quite nice in presentation, and just gameplay falls down a little bit, but it's okay. So moving on, next we have Justice Duel, which is a very joust-like game. This is for the NES. You control sort of like American presidents, and you fly on eagles and you battle your opponent and you work your way through. Visually, it's kind of ugly, I think, but yeah, it's a joust-like game, and it's fun enough, and yeah, you can genuinely have some fun with this one. But there's not a lot of variety, there's not really a lot to it, and yeah, you'll play through it once, maybe that'll be it. Multiplayer, you can have some fun with it. I haven't really tried that to any great extent. That could maybe bump it up the list a bit, maybe, possibly. But overall, yeah, it's an okay game, nothing special. And next up we have Super Painter for the NES. This is a fairly straightforward single screen platform puzzle game. You just got to run across the white platforms to colour them or paint them, hence the title Super Paint them. Super Painter even, I'll get my words out eventually. And simple and fun. It does what it needs to do. It looks okay, the music's nice enough, and some levels do get fairly challenging later on. I'll say fairly, but yeah, it's quite a fun little game. One I tend to find I played on handheld a lot more. I know it's one of those sort of small, sort of bite-sized games you can play a little bit of here and there, which is ideal on a handheld. Like I said, it's a simple, fun game, nothing more, nothing less. It's enjoyable. Okay, and next up is Little Medusa. This is a puzzle game where you control a little Medusa, and you can petrify enemies and basically kick them to essentially reveal blocks on the ground that you can walk on to allow you to get the stars to complete the level. Fairly straightforward stuff, and I found initially really hard to get into. I didn't really have that clear an idea of what I was doing. I kept dying. I just found it tough to get started into and get into it. But once I did find a very enjoyable puzzle game, and it went from being one of my least played games on it for a long time. Kept thinking I should give this a go, I should persevere, and rather than just dying on the first level and not bothering. And yeah, it does reward you once you get past that point. It is slightly flawed, but I think with save states, save at the beginning of every level, persevering to figure out that level, and it will allow you to progress quite well, although it is a fairly forgiving on its sort of lives and continues anyway. So yeah, it ended up as a decent puzzle game. And speaking of decent puzzle games, the next one on the list is Multi-Dude. This is again another puzzle game. You control multiple characters, you switch between them, and they have different abilities, which are obviously very apparent until you sort of play through and work out what they do. The basic concept is simple. You take these multiple characters, or these multi-dudes, and you get them to the exit squares. But you've got to get them all there, and because they move differently and have different behaviours, there's puzzles worked around that. It starts off very simple. The first few levels you will breeze through, as you'll see through this footage, but later on it gets quite devious. Like I said, it's a very good puzzle game, and interesting, I think this might have started out on the ZX Spectrum, and we do have, although it's a Mega Drive game, it does look a bit like a Spectrum game, just a bit more colourful. But for those familiar with the Spectrum, we'll recognise certain traits from in the visuals, but that's kind of irrelevant. But also, next up, we have another game which I believe also started on the Spectrum, is Old Towers, or I think it's just called Old Tower there. Again, this is a puzzle game. You have two characters. You've got to get through the levels and get them to the exit square, similar to Multi-Dude. However, this is a bit more, I suppose, fast-paced. You essentially push them in a direction, they'll shoot until they hit a wall and they'll stop. Essentially do this, collect the coins, get to the exit. And you have to do this with both the characters, and positioning of them and using the position of each character to sort of navigate and get the coins. And again, it starts off fairly easy and gets quite fiendish, particularly in the last few levels. Also, you have a really good soundtrack which kind of really bounces along with it, most notably a version of the song Popcorn. It's a really good fun puzzle game, and almost end up top of my list, and could have, in certain respects, it really depends on what mood I'm in or what sort of game I want to play. But top of the list is Tanza, and I think most people would agree with this. Being a vaguely Strider-like action game probably helps. Once again, this is a Mega Drive game, and you've got some really nice visuals. Well, I say nice visuals, very stylised visuals, very unique looking, some very strange bosses and enemies. The gameplay is, as I say, it's a little bit like Strider, but it's much more fast-paced, and it takes a while. It seems very difficult at first, but once you get the flow for the game, which I really haven't got, I haven't played it for a little while, and this footage you'll see here is me doing really badly, is like I've forgotten how to play it. I think there's something about 40 or 50 levels. It seems like quite a big game to get through, and it is a real challenge without save states, but I think you'll enjoy it enough to persevere and get good at it without just using save state abuse to get through it. One of the most notable things is the music is fantastic. Again, personal taste and all this, but I think it's really well done and it's quite clever. I remember seeing a video or something about it, how they used both sound chips that the Mega Drive has. One is the Master System chip, or the same chip as the Master System had, and then you've got the main Mega Drive sound chip used to it, and they combine those two things to make the music a bit more layered. But yeah, it's a very distinct, a very unique looking game, and at one point this was considered one of the best games on the Evercade, and one of those games that you can't really get very easily in other places, or at least as far as I know. I haven't really looked that hard. But anyway, yeah, it's a really good game, challenging but fun. So, ranking the cart as a whole, as you can tell, I mean, not all the games are good. There's a lot of them which I thought were pretty poor or just okay. But with the quantity of games you've got and the amount of good games on there, I think this is a cart that most people should pick up. And if you're just going to get one indie cart, this could be one of the ones you're going to look at. I mean, this was the first indie cart released for the Evercade, and I think they came out swinging really. The averages are out pretty well, with half the games being decent, depending on your taste, obviously. So yeah, I would give this one an 8 out of 10. And it's not legacy or anything like that, so yeah, I'd say it's well worth picking up if you can. Which stock availability shouldn't be too much of an issue. And as usual, I'll leave out on some silly song based on one of the games from this collection. I'll see you on the next video.
Smugglers are coming to steal our coffee, our metal and our Wi-Fi. They can't have my life. They're replacing our old folks before they can go up in smoke. But it's taking my cappuccino. In a quiet town where beams the ground, life took a twist, turned upside down. Aliens landed with a sinister plan to steal our coffee, gotta make a stand. Wake up baristas, it's time to fight. With coffee cups and a whole lot of might, we'll brew up justice, won't let them win in this caffeine battle. Let's begin. Coffee crisis will defend the beans. Aliens beware, we're living our dreams. With every punch and every kick, we'll save our brew, we'll make it stick. Grind it down in the heart of the night, we'll fight them off with all our might. From the roastery to the coffee shop, we'll keep on fighting, we'll never stop. Wake up baristas, it's time to fight. With coffee cups and a whole lot of might, we'll brew up justice, won't let them win. In this caffeine battle, let's begin. Coffee crisis will defend the beans. Aliens beware, we're living our dreams. With every punch and every kick, we'll save our brew, we'll make it stick. Through the grind, through the steam, we'll reclaim our coffee dream. With every sip, we'll stand tall. Together we will conquer all. Wake up baristas, it's time to fight. With coffee cups and a whole lot of might, we'll brew up justice, won't let them win. In this caffeine battle, let's begin. Coffee crisis will defend the beans. Aliens beware, we're living our dreams. With every punch and every kick, we'll save our brew, we'll make it stick. So raise your mugs, let's toast tonight to the barista's break.